Hello again, this is Bill Jones from Freedom's Nest. Going to have another presentation, another episode. And of course that's brought to you and it's on my site, recapturefederalism.com. That's correct, I'm a federalist, not a conservative, not a libertarian, but a federalist. Well, just like the founders and the framers of the Constitution, that's what they were. 85 Federalist Papers. And today's subject is, hey, Glenn Beck, are you really a communist? Now you're wondering why I bring up Glenn Beck. First of all, this is not a bashing of Glenn Beck. It's an example meant as constructive criticism. I have no intention of offending Glenn Beck. But I was watching him last week, one of his shows. I don't subscribe, but I get some notices of it. A synopsis of his shows. And one of them was a clip where he and Pat discussing religion and politics, and that you shouldn't talk about religion and politics. Before I go any further, let me go ahead and do what I always do somewhere along the start of my presentation. I, William R. Jones, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. So help me God. Interesting, just what we're talking about right there. So help me God. And I'm talking about the Constitution. You see, they're intertwined, religion and politics. I found it somewhat personally offensive, not only from Glenn Beck, but others when they say, you can't talk about politics and religion or religion and politics. Where does that come from anyway? Who doesn't want you to talk about that? The framers, they want you to talk about it all the time. George Washington, and I'll get into that in a little bit. George Washington, in his farewell address, talks about the negativities of political parties and how you're not even supposed to have political parties in America. I've gotten into that in the past, and I'll get it again into the future. There is no legal basis or authority for political parties in the United States. And right after he had those several paragraphs concerning political parties, he has several paragraphs concerning religion and morality. They're intertwined also. That's where we get the Ten Commandments from. It's from the Holy Bible. Given presentations in the past on that. I will again in the future. It's critical to the United States. I found it personally offensive, not only from him, just the idea. Because the communists are the ones that don't want you talking about that. And I find it personally offensive because of me and who I am and what I believe. Me, I'm just a dumbass street kid from the south side of Chicago. I'm an old one now, I've learned. And where else to learn about corruption than on the streets of the south side of Chicago? Then and now. I'm a Christian, a Lutheran, brought up that way, confirmed as a member of the Lutheran Church when I was 14 years old, had been through the Luther's small catechism. It was a German-based church. Even back there in the late 50s, they still had German services. In fact, we had a minister originally from Germany, and he had been in Germany when the Nazis were there. He came to the United States. And I'll never forget the first day we had our confirmation classes, catechism classes, with the small catechism. You will learn. That's what he told us, and he sure did teach us. Part of the Luther Small Catechism covers a lot of things, of course. Is the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer. There's the petitions of the Lord's Prayer. Interesting, isn't it? Petitions. Where do you see that at? Yeah, that's right. First Amendment petitions. When I just said the oath, the enlisted man's oath, and the officer's oath for that matter, anytime, government oaths, when they say, so help me God, that is a petition. And in the Lord's Prayer, there's a petition. There's several of them. And the fourth one is, give us this day our daily bread. And what does Luther teach us about that? He explains it. What does that mean? The answer, God gives us daily bread even without our prayer to all wicked men. But we pray in this petition that he would lead us to know it and to receive our daily bread with thanksgiving. Then he goes on. What is meant by the daily bread? And the answer, and this is interesting, listen closely. It's all about family. Basic things that you need. But here's what he says. Everything that belongs to the support and wants of the body, such as meat, drink, clothing, shoes, house, homestead, field, cattle, money, goods, a pious spouse, a pious children, pious servants, pious and faithful magistrates, good government. That's right, I say good government. Good government, good weather, peace, health, discipline, honor, good friends, faithful neighbors, and the like. Wow. Talking about family, talking about the basics of life to live, and he's talking about faithful magistrates and good government. You see, at an early age, I learned from him, and he was around in the late 1400s, early 1500s, even then. Because that's in the Bible about good government. Yes, he's talking about good government. Wow. George Washington's farewell address, 1796, in September. I mentioned about the political parties, and not supposed to have that. And then there's, after he talks about that, there's religion and morality. Let me just start. There's several paragraphs. I'm not going to read them all. But I'm going to read part of one where he starts out about religion and morality. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. You see, George Washington links in one sentence politics and religion, that they're necessary. They're indispensable supports of politics, of government, especially good government. And where is the opposite of good government? People that adhere to a foreign influence, and that's what Washington also refers to a little farther on down the line past religion and morality. There's bad government, and that's where we get the bad government, because the founders gave us good government. And if you real closely, it's from the authority of God. Romans 13 talks about good government and a legal system based upon the Ten Commandments, God's commandments. Well, if that's good, then what is bad? Well, it's the opposite of what is good, obviously. You have good and evil. And evil government, well, that's communism. I took that oath that I took earlier. I took it in 1965. The enemy at that time, both foreign and domestic, was communism. And it still is. We now have a great expansive government of Americans who adhere to bad government policies and public violations of public trust. It's so bad, that type of action or behavior is so bad that the framers have in the Constitution Article 3, Section 3, under the judicial powers area of the Constitution, treason. And when you have bad government, you have people who are adhering, in this case, to communism, bad government. It's a treasonable act. That's what that Article 3, Section 3 is. And to all you, Mr. Beck, and to all other people who say we shouldn't talk about religion and politics, I guess we're not supposed to talk about the Constitution. In the Constitution, there's Article 6 of the Constitution of the United States. There is 3 paragraphs. The first one's been completed, had to do with debts from the Articles of Confederation, and we still are a confederation. The second paragraph is a supremacy clause. I've done presentations on that. You won't find any political parties mentioned in there, by the way. And then the third paragraph in Article 6 has to do with religion. It's called the Religion Clause. The senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. So, we have Article 6 and Article 3. You see, if you don't follow Article 6, and you're not in compliance with Article 6, you have committed perjury. You have violated an oath or affirmation. And where does oaths come from? They're in the Bible. 2 places, which conforms with Jewish law, minimum of 2 witnesses, and that makes it the truth. Exodus 20, verse 7, Deuteronomy 5, verse 11. If you don't follow an oath to God, if it's false, you are guilty of violating the 3rd commandment from God. Now, I suppose if you believe in a political system like communism, which comes from the 2 prophets of communism, which is a religion, comes from Engels and Marx, by the way, who were both atheists. That's right. They don't believe in keeping oaths. They don't believe in God. In communism, by the way, this idea of separation of church and state. Where do you think that comes from? Where are you talking about communism? So a good guess would be communism. It is. It's from the Communist Manifesto. Page 56 of the Communist Manifesto. In 1848, the Committee of Justice, or whatever they call themselves, the Committee of Justice wrote a public letter, an open letter, which appeared in publications. They did that stuff back then too. So you get people on all sides of an issue write public letters and put it out there. And guess what it is? It's the demands of the Communist Party in Germany in 1848. And that's the title. And the subtitle is a quote, "Workers of all countries unite." Oh yeah. Workers of the world, there we go. World communism. There are a list of 17 demands. And number 13 of the demands, and I will quote, "Complete separation of church and state. The clergy of every denomination shall be paid only by the voluntary contributions of their congregations." You see, they don't want religion to be anywhere near communism, because the aim of communism is to make religions disappear. That was page 56. If you go back to page 52, under the principles of communism, question 23, and this is, what will be the attitude to existing religions? And of course that's the communist attitudes, and here it is. And I've done this before. It's critical. All religions so far have been expressions of historical stages of development of individual peoples or groups of peoples, but communism is the stage of historical development which makes all existing religions superfluous and brings about their disappearance. They are working to get rid of all religions. They're anti-Semitic, anti-Christian. Well, I mentioned Washington and I mentioned the communist, but maybe we ought to have a voice from God, Christ, and one of his apostles who can talk about the communist and address them and tell us about them, because the cycles of life, the historical stages over and over, that's what communists like to talk about, are historical stages. And let's talk about those historical stages and about people like them. 2 Peter 2, the second epistle general of Peter, chapter 2. Okay? "But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there will be false teachers among you, who shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord, who has redeemed them, and thus bringing upon themselves swift destruction. Many will follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom evil will be spoken by the way of truth. And through covetousness they will exploit you with vain words, whose judgment from the very beginning has not ceased, and their damnation is always active. God did not spare the angels who sinned, and cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved for tormenting justice." And he goes on and on. If you want to read all about America in 2014, I suggest you read the whole chapter on there. Or you can also read from the Old Testament, for our Jewish brothers and sisters, Deuteronomy chapter 32, which is a song of Moses. Yes, that's right. They didn't bother, Ingalls and Marx didn't bother to ask him anything in the Bible because they don't believe in it. They don't believe in God. They're atheist. And they're going to impose their Communist Manifesto on the world. And we've got people in America who are doing that too. I could go farther and farther about the woes of the scribes and the Pharisees. I get deeper and deeper in that. And Mr. Beck, you are a scribe. You should read Matthew 23. Read all about it. No, I'm going to keep talking about religion and politics because it's very important, because my constitutional rights are being violated by people adhering to the Communist Manifesto and other documentation of communist parties. You do not have to be a communist to adhere to the Communist Manifesto, but it is religious persecution. And we also have on page 26 of the Communist Manifesto 2 paragraphs, which I've done in the past, and I will continuously do it. And it begins, the quote, "Undoubtedly, it will be said religious, moral, philosophical, juridical ideas have been modified in the course of historical development, but religion, morality, philosophy, political science, and law constantly survive this change. There are besides eternal truths such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society, but communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. Communism eliminates all those things. It puts in place of God the state, the communist state, where they say there is no room for religions, a complete separation of church and state. That's what they say.